I'm really excited to be here to share a little bit about the practice of self-compassion and how this practice will allow you to meet the challenges you might be facing with more skill and more ease. First, I'd like to begin with a guided reflection. You can close your eyes or just turn inward to see what comes up for you. I'd like you to imagine a time when a close friend was going through a tough time. Maybe they were suffering in some way. Maybe they made a mistake or failed in some way. Maybe things weren't turning out as they expected or would have liked. So, as you think about this situation, think about how you show up for your friend. What are the words that you use? What is the message that you want to give your friend? What is the tone, how you deliver this message? And finally, how do you position yourself with your friend? Are there any gestures, physical gestures or postures that accompany this message? Okay, so now I want you to think of a time when you yourself was suffering. Maybe you failed in some way. Maybe things were not working out the way you had hoped. We've all been there. What is the message that you give yourself? What are the words that you use? Think about this inner dialogue. And how are those words delivered? What is the tone of this message? And then again, also check in with your body. What kind of gestures, how are you holding your body? What kind of physical behaviors might accompany this message as you're having this inner dialogue with yourself? All right, so looking at those two scenarios, did you notice that there was a difference? What was the difference? This is really worth taking a look at because we want to discover just how differently we treat ourselves than others that we care deeply for. Research has shown us that about 78% of people in the general population of the US are more compassionate towards others than themselves. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what is self-compassion. So some of the informal definitions of self-compassion are treating ourselves with the same kindness we would as we treat a friend, or treating ourselves as we would like others to treat us. Right? Having compassion for oneself is no different than having compassion for someone else. So we can think about that experience of compassion, what it feels like, and then begin to turn that towards ourselves. So the first thing we want to do to have compassion is to notice that we're suffering, right? So if you see somebody on the street, you're not going to have compassion for them if you don't notice the suffering that they're having, right? So that's the first step, that mindfulness piece, knowing that there's suffering present. And then second, compassion involves feeling moved by others' suffering so that your heart responds to their pain. The word compassion literally means to suffer with, right? So there's a little bit of this empathy here, right? And this occurs when you feel this kind of warmth and caring and the desire to help a suffering person in some way. So having compassion means that you offer understanding and kindness to others when they fail or make mistakes rather than judging them harshly. And the same goes for ourselves. And then finally, when you feel compassion for another, it means that you realize that suffering, failure, and imperfection is part of the shared human experience. Self-compassion involves acting the same way towards yourself when you're having these failures, mistakes, where you notice something you don't like about yourself. So instead of just ignoring your pain with a stiff upper lip, you can stop and tell yourself, this is really difficult right now. How can I comfort and care for myself in this moment? Not to fix my suffering, but just because I am suffering. Instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing yourself for various inadequacies and shortcomings, self compassion means that you are kind and understanding when confronted with these personal failings or situations in life that we all encounter that are challenging. After all, whoever said that we're supposed to be perfect? We think that sometimes, right? But nobody's perfect. And self compassion doesn't mean that you may not try to change in ways that allow you to be more healthy and happy, but it's done because you care about yourself, not because you're worthless or unacceptable as you are. And perhaps most importantly, having compassion for yourself means that you honor and accept your humanness. Things are not always going to go your way. You'll encounter frustrations, losses will occur. You will make mistakes or bump up against your limitations, fall short of your ideals. This is the human condition, and it's a reality shared by all of us. The more you open your hearts to this reality instead of constantly fighting against it, the more you'll be able to feel compassion for yourself and your fellow humans. So, how do we do this? Self compassion is often a radically new way of relating with ourselves, right? So, we can use this informal practice that we're about to do called the self compassion break. This helps us to cultivate the feelings of self compassion. This journey is a practice, right? We need to practice this to change any habit. So let's try this now. All right, so think of a situation in life that is causing you some stress, and maybe it's a health problem, a relationship problem, a work problem. Perhaps it is a friend who is creating some difficulties, challenging, relationship. So choose a problem in that mid to moderate range, not a huge problem, not the most traumatic thing happening right now. Allow yourself to, start small, right? We're practicing, we're wading into the shallow end right now of self compassion. All right, so just allow yourself to recall the situation. Who was there? What was said? What's happening? See if you can bring that into your mind as vividly as possible. You're opening up to the suffering a little bit, right? We want to see if we can feel a little of this discomfort in the body as you bring this difficulty to mind. And then just saying to yourself silently in your mind, or even out loud, if you're in a position where you can do so, this is a moment of suffering, or this is a moment of difficulty or challenge. This is mindfulness, turning towards noticing that suffering is here. Perhaps some other words are speaking to you. Maybe just, this is really hard, or this hurts. This is so stressful. And now saying to yourself, difficulty is part of life. This is common humanity, right? I'm not alone. Nothing has gone horribly wrong for me to feel this way. This is how it feels when people struggle in this way. And now putting your hand over your heart, just feeling the warmth and that gentle touch of your hand. Or maybe adopting another supportive touch, maybe holding your own hand, just holding your arms, discovering one that feels right for you, and saying to yourself, may I be kind to myself. Another way of saying this might be, may I give myself what I need, or I've got your back. perhaps just resting here and seeing if there are any particular words that you really need to hear right now as you're going through this difficult situation. Some options might be, may I be strong? May I be patient with myself? May I feel protected? Or maybe some encouragement. I can do this. You are enough. And if you're having difficulty finding the right words, you can imagine a dear friend or a loved one that's having the same problem as you. What would you say to this person? Sometimes it's easier to kind of offer it to another. So imagine that. What simple message would you like to deliver to your friend, heart to heart? And then see if you can offer that same message to yourself. All right, so just take a few moments, maybe even pause this recording to settle and reflect on this exercise. And remember that this was sort of conducted as an informal reflective meditation, but that part or all of this could be implemented very quickly in daily life. When you notice a challenge arising or you're suffering in some way, this is a moment of suffering. This is normal. This is part of life. I'm not alone. How can I be kind to myself? So, thank you for practicing with me today. I hope you continue to find peace and ease with this journey of self compassion.